Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the New York Islanders, as it was a interesting, to say the least, free agency this year. It was more about retaining guys, keeping guys on Long Island. I don't want to mess that up. Keeping guys on Long Island and looking to run it again. We're going to take a look at that today. So, a bunch of signings for the Islanders. Obviously, they they traded Josh Bailey to Chicago for an inevitable buyout. But the main thing was some of the guys they were able to keep long term. So the first one here is Pierre Engvall. He comes in at $3 million per season on a 7-year deal. So 7 years, $21 million for Engvall. Now, honestly, I'm okay with this deal. It's one of those things that once the salary cap continues to go up, I think that's actually going to look like a pretty good deal. Now, the cap hit's a little bit high in the sense of, it's a long-term deal, and he is 27, so this will take him until he's 34 years old. So in that sense, I'm not the biggest fan of that part of it, but the fact that the cap hit is so low, I really like that aspect to this deal. And we've seen Lamoriello do this a couple times. We saw him do it with Cizikas on a 5-year deal, $2.5 million per year. We saw him do it with Clutterbuck a couple years back. We've seen him do it with Ross Johnston here. So this isn't really all that surprising. Now, the other ones here for the Islanders, of course, the other big one being Scott Mayfield, who signed an 7-year deal, $3.5 million per season. This deal is going to take him till he's 37 years old. Bleh. I'm not a fan of that one. Now, of the contracts, I think this one's the most controversial, because when you look at Scott Mayfield, yeah, he's a good hockey player. I like him on the Islanders, but I really thought he was going to be leaving the Islanders and going to St. Louis or Nashville. And that didn't end up being the case. He ends up staying with the Islanders. He's played over 400 games with the Islanders. He's been in the Islanders organization since the 2012-2013 season, where he played 6 games in Bridgeport with the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. Yes, he's been with the team that long when they were called the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. He's been with this team for a very long time. He's willing to drop the gloves. He's a big body, 6'5", 223 pounds. And with what we saw Vegas do, that big defense this past season, this is an attractive guy to a lot of teams, right? A big defenseman that can skate decently and not afraid to drop the gloves and is tough to play against. That is Scott Mayfield. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of the number at 3.5 per year on a 7-year deal. But when you consider his value probably on the marketplace, it's not that bad. The other one is obviously Ilya Sorokin, which this one's easy for me. I'm completely okay with this one. Ilya Sorokin comes in, 8-year deal, $8.25 million per season, $66 million over the next 8 years for Ilya Sorokin. Now, he's also on the final year of his deal currently, which is $2.75, so he's going to see a huge $4 million. So he's going to see a $4.25 million salary increase next summer. So congratulations there to Ilya Sorokin. He's definitely earned it. That deal is going to take him till he's 34, 35 years old. Honestly, I'm okay with that. This is a guy that I've always wanted to be a New York Islander. We were, under the Gar Snow era, we weren't even sure he would come to North America unless he was traded. Back in 2020 or 2021, there was rumors that the Islanders were going to trade his rights to the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's been a roller coaster of a situation with the Ilya Sorokin saga. I've made plenty of videos on that if you're interested in how Sorokin got to the Islanders, and the fact that he might not have even gone to the Islanders had things fallen a different way. But he is with the Islanders, thankfully. And his buddy, Semyon Varlamov, is as well. He was a UFA this summer, but the Islanders brought him back. A little bit controversial on this one, too. $2.75 million per season until 2027. Varlamov's already 35 years old. This is a 4-year deal that's going to take him until he's 39. So the Islanders goaltending between Varlamov and Sorokin when their deals end, Sorokin's going to be 35. And Varlamov will be 39 years old. So this duo will be lasting at the very least for the next probably 3, if not 4 seasons. Really, really, really interesting here by the Islanders. A little bit high on the per season cap hit at 2.75 and a long-term deal. Now, I don't think the Islanders would have been able to keep Varlamov had it been a shorter deal. I think if it was a 2-year deal, teams were probably offering more money per year on a 2-year deal. So the Islanders had to give him that term, and we know Lamoriello is notorious for that, and he kind of did that again here. Now, it's interesting, too. They still have to re-sign Oliver Wahlstrom. He is the last RFA that needs to be signed. The Islanders have to figure that out with Wally this summer. He is not up for arbitration, so the Islanders don't have to worry about that. I know it's a little bit surprising, but the Islanders don't have to go to arbitration this summer, which is definitely a good thing. It's a change of pace for the Islanders, where it seems like every summer they've been going into arbitration, at least with 2 or 3 guys, whether it was, Anthony Beauvillier or... they had some situations with Pelech and Pulak and Barzal. So I'm glad to see that there's a little bit of stability there. Now, obviously the criticism here is for the Islanders. They signed a lot of guys long-term that there were guys on the market that went to new teams that only got 1 or 2 or maybe at most 3-year deals for similar numbers. Why do the Islanders have to sign these guys to 7-year deals? And that's kind of the problem here, right? The idea is for the Islanders just to keep these guys, they had to give them super long contracts, where elsewhere in the marketplace, a lot of guys weren't getting the term that the Islanders' Lamoriello was giving out to his players. So there is that sentiment out there that the Islanders may have, maybe not per season overpaid, but duration overpaid. And I think that's something that we're going to start to figure out here over the next couple years, if this was a good move or not by the Islanders. You're looking at a lot of money being locked up by the Islanders here. They just signed Bo Horvat, an 8-year deal, $8.5 million, that kicked off earlier last week. Now you've got, just going into the 2029 season, these are the contracts the Islanders already have locked up. $9.15 million locked up in Barzal. $8.5 million locked up in Horvat. $3 million locked up in Pierre Engvall. $6.15 million locked up in Ryan Pulak. $5.75 locked up in Pelech. $3.5 locked up in Scott Mayfield. And Ilya Sorokin locked up at $8.25 million. So just to put that in perspective, this is now, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons from now. 5 seasons from now, the Islanders have already spent... Wait, let me see if I got this right. I don't want to mess this up because you guys will blast me for it. $44.3 million already spent. And hopefully the cap is up to $100 million, which would theoretically give the Islanders $60 million left to play with. So maybe this ends up being a good thing, because that Barzal contract and Horvat contract could look a lot better in another, even 5 years. By the time we get to 2029, those contracts could actually not look so bad, because Horvat's in his early 30s at that point. Same thing for Barzal. They're in their early 30s at that point. And when we're seeing contracts like Matthews making $14 million, which is basically double what Barzal and Horvat would be making, those contracts look a lot easier to digest. But then the caveat is, the Engvall contract. That $3 million eats up a guy that could have stayed, or that $3.5 million that you spent on Mayfield, prevents you from keeping somebody else. Really, until the summer of 2027, the Islanders have a lot of money locked up. And that's kind of going to be the situation here, because you're kind of looking at the cap structure here. Nelson's got 2 years left on his deal. Paul Murray's got 2 years left on his deal. Pajot's got 3 years left on his deal. So the Islanders have a decent amount of money locked up. And the next big contract for the Islanders is going to be, yes, Oliver Wahlstrom here. But other than that, you've got Romanov and Dobson in 2025. And next summer, you really don't have anybody. It's really Simon Holmstrom. That's the only guy the Islanders theoretically have to keep, right? Because Martin and Clutterbuck, yeah, they're good players, but I'm not really worried about them, whether they stay or go at this point. The Islanders' big-name guys are going to be here next season. And that's where I think the Islanders avoiding, we know that scenario, right? Once you spend $10 million on a player, we've only had this year the first player, Mark Stone, to ever lift the Stanley Cup making $10 million per season. That's the first time we've ever seen that in NHL history. The Islanders are avoiding that situation by keeping everybody under $10 million. And the fact that Barzal and Horvat are at 9.15 and Horvat's at 8.5, that's a good thing for the Islanders. And that means that most contracts are going to fall under that, because you have to make the argument, well, should you make more than Barzal or Bo Horvat, who are point leaders every season? Probably not the case, and that's where the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello and whoever's the future GM, maybe it's Chris Lamoriello, have a little bit of leverage come contract time. The opposite of right now what's happening with Matthews and Marner and William Nylander in Toronto, just to name an example. So guys, that's it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think down below. Is there a sigh of relief for the Islanders locking these guys up long term? Your fan favorites coming back and homegrown, homebred guys like Scott Mayfield? Or is it more of, this is going to be a nasty rebuild in 3 or 4 years when we still got 2 or 3 years left on a lot of these deals? Guys that aren't that good, and we're paying them a lot of money. I want to know what you guys think of that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.